afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming to the New Canaan Library. I wonder how many of you realize that April is National Poetry Month, and New Canaan Library is celebrating with a unique program that features Mr. Peter J. O'Connell, writer, researcher, and former Yale instructor. Mr. O'Connell will present what the great poets had to say about aging, and the event is co-sponsored by Staying Put in New Canaan. Mr. O'Connell dispels the myth that poetry is often about youth and young love. He taps the creative genius of many poets, including Shakespeare, Robert Browning, and Robert Frost, to address this process of aging and thoughts on the later stages of life. In turn, profound, humorous, and poignant, the poetry he highlights has volumes to say on the subject. Although the topic centers on aging, this dynamic presentation has delighted audiences throughout all ages, youth on up, further on. Mr. O'Connell holds a BA in English and History from Johns Hopkins University and an MA in American Studies from Yale Graduate School. For half a century, he has been a professional, as I said, writer, researcher, editor, and from time to time, a college teacher at Yale, Fordham, Bethune, is that right? Bethune-Cookman, the University of New Haven, Southern Connecticut State University, and Alberta Magnus, of all subjects from the great books of the Western world to Native American literature. And then let me tell you just a little bit about Staying Put in New Canaan. It's a private, nonprofit organization founded here in New Canaan, and it allows residents and people later in life to be able to stay in their home. And I'm not exactly, does anyone here know anything more about Staying Put? Yes?
My mother has been to, they sponsor dinners sometimes at people's houses.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, that's great. Just on a personal note, I just will tell you that my mother-in-law celebrated her 99th birthday in February, and it's just been in the last 5 or 6 months that she's been unable to go outside. But if it hadn't been for someone helping her in her home, she couldn't have stayed there, and she didn't want to leave. So it's wonderful if you're able to stay in your own home. All library programs here are free to the public and open to people from all towns. So I hope you will enjoy today's program. Please join me in welcoming Mr. O'Connell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the library and Staying Put in New Canaan for inviting me. I've heard good things about both of them. I'm also very pleased to see the great range of ages represented in this group, including many young people. And I hope that as we explore the poetry of aging and the last of life, we can have take away some thoughts that will help people of all ages. One of the remarks that I wanted to begin with is that there are many misconceptions about poetry. One of them, of course, is that it's flowery, uses too many words. Well, perhaps if you're writing about flowers, it might be flowery, but it's also many other things, depending upon what the poet wants to achieve. To describe something, to express a mood or emotion, to make some point. But to me, poetry is actually language working hard to achieve its goals with as few words as possible. And to do that working hard and make it all seem easy. Now, we've all heard the saying that one picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I would say that one good line of poetry can be worth 1,000 lines or more of prose, depending on how great the poet is in working hard, but making it all seem easy. And as we explore themes and techniques that poets have used to explore aging, I hope you will notice a number of such lines. Please feel free to ask a question or make a comment at any time during the presentation. And at the end, we can have a discussion, or some of you may have some poems you want to read, and I have some material that I'll pass out at that time. Now, the question is, in thinking about aging, where would you begin? Well, I think you have to begin by getting the big picture and seeing where aging fits in the whole process of life. And when you're going for the big picture, it's probably a good idea to start with Shakespeare. He seems able to present the big picture. And I think that in a famous and brilliant passage from his play As You Like It, and of course the plays are written in poetry, you will see how he is able to put aging into the big picture of life, and I think you will see how he is able to bring many things together in a few powerful words. Because what he does is he takes the concept of the stages of life and brings it right down to what he's involved in, his beloved theater. And the stages of life are like acts in a play. So he has combined these things. And you certainly know some of the lines from this passage. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women on it merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. So see if you can spot the seven ages there. I might mention that at the end of the passage, he uses the word sans, which means without. His acts being in 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in his nurse's arms. Then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like a snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like a furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice with a round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank. And his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange and eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Well, there are many passages in this that I like. I particularly like the infant mewling and puking in his nurse's arms, the schoolboy making his way to school like a snail unwillingly. But I think, we might want to disagree with this Sands business. But it's a play, and in all plays, you have to interpret what is said by the character that's saying it. And this character is described as melancholy Jaques. And in other plays, Shakespeare gives a much cheerier vision of old age. But there's no doubt that Shakespeare's most powerful vision of old age is very intense but not very cheery, and it's the tragedy of King Lear. King Lear was a very powerful king, and he fell into some tough circumstances in the last part of his life. He found himself not only suffering physical pains of old age, but the actual poverty of his subjects. But what bothered him the most was a mental pain, an emotional pain, because he realized that his troubles had been brought upon him by his own children and by his own actions. And he rages against his children. He says, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have an ungrateful child. But then he begins to realize that a lot of the fault lies within him. And he has to move beyond rage. And that's what a great tragedy does. It takes a character beyond an emotion like rage into some kind of wisdom. And Lear, who has been turned out onto a desolate heath in a terrible storm, starts to acquire wisdom as he begins to identify with the poorest of his subjects. And he says, he looks up at the storm, he raises his fists, and he says, poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and windowed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I have taken too little care of this. Take physic, pomp, and expose yourself to feel what wretches feel, that thou may shake the superflux to them and show the heavens more just. There's a great line there. Take physic, pomp. If you think about what a physic does, and you realize that Lear has come to understand that the pomp and pageantry, the power and the glory that have surrounded him throughout his own life are really the equivalent of human waste that have to be purged from your system. Caring, compassion, and concern for others are the things that really count. So we see Shakespeare writing about the stages of life in As You Like It, but at other times he wrote about the seasons of life. And many other poets have used the seasons as metaphors for the progression of life. For example, John Donne, who was a contemporary of Shakespeare's, led a wild and romantic life as a youth, but later became an Anglican priest and came to appreciate quieter delights. As in these lines, nor spring nor summer beauty hath such grace as I have seen in one autumnal face. Nor spring nor summer's beauty hath such grace as I have seen in one autumnal face. 200 years later, John Keats, a poet of the Romantic movement, wrote a poem called The Human Seasons, and it goes like this. 4 seasons fill the measure of the year. There are 4 seasons in the mind of man. He has his lusty spring, when fancy clear takes in all beauty with an easy span. He has his summer, when luxuriously springs honeyed cud of youthful thought. He loves to ruminate, and by such dreaming high is nearest unto heaven. Quiet coves his soul has in its autumn, when his wings he furtheth close, contented so to look on mists in idleness, to let fair things pass by unheeded as a threshold brook. He has his winter of pale misfeature, or else he would forego his mortal nature. And the 20th century American poet and statesman Archibald MacLeish, in his lines Immortal Autumn, saw autumn and the autumn of our lives as a special time. I speak this poem now with grave and level voice in praise of autumn, of the far horn-winding fall. I praise the fall. It is the human season. So we see that poets can talk about our lives in terms of the seasons, and the seasons in terms of our lives. Again, bringing things together, making language work hard, but making it seem easy. I might mention that MacLeish was responsible for the creation of the post of Poet Laureate of the United States. So in poetic terms, winter is advanced age. We might call it the season of sands. And it can pose seemingly inhuman challenges if one is frail and alone. Consider, for example, the man in Robert Frost's An Old Man's Winter Night. He's alone, befuddled, in his farmhouse in the New England countryside on a bitterly cold night. The poem begins this way with a careful observation for which Frost is noted. All out of doors looked darkly in at him. Through the thin frost, almost in separate stars, that gathers on the pane in empty rooms. What kept his eyes from giving back the gaze was a lamp tilted near them in his hand. What kept him from remembering the need that brought him to that creaking room was age. Well, there's a great line there. All out of doors looked darkly in at him. The poem then goes on and it ends like this. A log that shifted with a jolt once in the stove disturbed him, and he shifted and eased his heavy breathing, but still slept. One aged man, one man, can't keep a house, a farm, a countryside. Or if he can, it's thus he does it of a winter's night. So Frost gives us an old man who's challenged by winter, but tries with courage to meet that challenge. And we return to Shakespeare in As You Like It. He has a character who succeeds in finding a good side to winter. This character says happily, "Therefore my age is as a lusty winter, frosty but kindly." There's something that appeals to me about that phrase, frosty but kindly. Okay, so we see poets using the concept of stages and seasons. But let's look now at what they did in terms of memories. Memories, of course, are something very important as one goes up in years. The golden years are ones for golden memories, but memories are made of what? Well, many things, of course, but love is one of them. And old poets have written memorably of the memories of young love, as in Leigh Hunt's delightful Jenny Kissed Me. Do we have any Jennies here today? I always ask that question because I'm trying to get a kiss out of it. Jenny kissed me when we met, jumping from the chair she sat in. Time, you thief who love to get sweets into your list, put that in. Say I'm weary, say I'm sad, say that wealth and health have passed me. Say I'm growing old, but add, Jenny kissed me. And of course, there are warm memories of childhood friendships, as at the beginning of Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale. Two lads that thought there was no more behind but such a day tomorrow as today, and to be boy eternal. We were as twinned lambs that did frisk in the sun and bleat the one at the other. What we changed was innocence for innocence. We knew not the doctrine of ill-doing, nor dreamed that any did. And some of the most intense memories of all are those by veterans of their service to their country. Do we have veterans here now? Very good. What branch of the service?
The U.S. Marine Corps.
Okay. What conflict period?
What period? 1943 to 46.
Okay. Very busy period for the Marine Corps. Yes, sir. What period?
Korean War.
Okay. Very grim war. I hope we don't have to go back there again. So we have the memories of veterans. Now, Shakespeare in Henry V depicts the Battle of Agincourt, which was one of England's proudest hours, for a small force of peasant archers defeated the finest flower of French chivalry, heavily armored knights on horseback. Before the battle, which was fought on St. Crispian's Day, Shakespeare has King Henry inspire his troops by telling them that what their future memories will be like if they are victorious. So in the present, King Henry talks about in the future what they will remember. And he says, this day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian's Day. Then he will strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispian's Day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world. But we in it shall be remembered, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Well, you've heard some of those phrases, I'm sure. We happy few, we band of brothers. The king says to the peasant soldiers, you fight this day, you're my brother. And that's what soldiers and sailors and veterans say about their comrades in struggle. Of course, memories that keep recurring are those of the decisions or lack of decision that shaped our lives and determined the path that we followed. Consider, for example, Frost's The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps a better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood. And I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Robert Frost. Wallace Stevens in Sunday Morning raises recall of intense experiences to the level of religious experience. In the poem, a woman of a certain age is relaxing on her porch, enjoying coffee and oranges. We have coffee back there. When she hears in the distance the sound of church services, memories flood her mind, and she thinks divinity must live within herself. Passions of rain or moods in falling snow, grievings and loneliness or unsubdued elations when the forest blooms, gusty emotions on wet roads on autumn nights. All pleasures and all pains, remembering the bough of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. Stevens had a somewhat unusual background in terms of the stereotypes about poets. He was a conservative Republican insurance executive who lived in West Hartford in a big house and walked to work every day at the insurance company and had lunch every day at an exclusive club with a canoe on the wall. But he was one of the greatest of modernist poets. I might mention that a personal recollection of Robert Frost. In January of 1961, when President Kennedy was inaugurated, I happened to be able to attend that inauguration. And that was the first time that a poet read at an inauguration. And the poet was Robert Frost. He was very advanced in age at that time. And when he started to read his poem, it had been a snowy day and a sunny day, and the combination of the snow and the sun made it very difficult for him to read from the page. And Vice President Johnson attempted to shade the page so he could read it, but that didn't work. So Frost threw the pages away and recited the poem. And he died not too long after that. That was that was when President Kennedy made his famous remark about ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But there's also a tale about Frost and Wallace Stevens. In the 1930s, Ernest Hemingway was living in Key West, Florida, and Frost and Stevens, separately, would go there for the winter or part of the winter. And it was said that they didn't get along. The three of them did not get along with each other. And at one point, Frost and Stevens actually had a fist fight, and Stevens knocked Frost down. Stevens was a bigger and a younger man. But then Stevens also got into a fist fight with Ernest Hemingway. And you could probably guess that the result there was a little different. Hemingway knocked him out. So great writers, maybe great friends, or not. Anyway, returning to the topic of recollections, memories. Recollections can be happy, proud, meditative, or deeply rueful. In Maud Muller, John Greenleaf Whittier tells the story of a judge and a farm girl who fall in love but marry others and lead unhappy lives, yet constantly think of their youthful encounter. And Whittier ends their story this way. Alas for maiden, alas for judge, for rich repiner and household drudge. God pity them both and pity us all who vainly the dreams of youth recall. For of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been. Has regret ever been expressed more strikingly than in those words of Whittier? I don't think so. So as we age, what is our attitude toward those around us, particularly those with whom we have shared a life? Is it inviting and appreciative? Is it like the exultation of Robert Browning's Rabbi Ben Ezra about a great medieval Jewish scholar? Grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. Our times are in his hand, who saith, the whole I planned, youth shows but half. Trust God, see all, nor be afraid. Is it perhaps an appreciation that rises to the level of undying passion? As when in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, one of Antony's friends described Antony's feelings toward Cleopatra, the woman for whom he sought and lost an empire. Age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. Other women cloy the appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. For vilest things become themselves in her, that the holy priests bless her when she is riggish. Yes, the word is riggish, not priggish. In fact, riggish means sexy, the exact opposite of priggish. Language is an amazing thing. Or is our approach to those around us one of world weariness and cynical humor? As in Wallace Stevens' The Monocle of My Uncle, about his wife and him living together like two plants. He says, our bloom is gone, we are the fruit thereof, two golden gourds distended on our vines. They become a little plump by that time, resembling gourds. Into the two golden gourds distended on our vines, into the autumn weather, splashed with frost, white hair, distorted by hail fatness, turned grotesque, we hang like warty squashes, streaked and rayed, the laughing sky will see the two of us washed into rinds by rotting winter rains. So you have a range of approaches. But when we have lost those truly near and dear, we have to learn to live with their absence, wrenching though that may be. As John Milton puts it in Lycidas, a lament for a lost friend. But oh, the heavy change now thou art gone. Now thou art gone and never must return. Edna St. Vincent Millay is sometimes called the flapper poet because of her popularity in the 1920s and the attitude toward life summed up in her lines, my candle burns at both ends, but ah, my foes and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light. But as time went on and lovers passed on, she penned these poignant lines. What lips my lips have kissed, and where and why I have forgotten. And what arms have lain under my head till morning. But the rain is full of ghosts tonight that tap and sigh upon the glass and listen for reply. And in my heart there stirs a quiet pain for unremembered lads that not again will turn to me at midnight with a cry. I cannot say what loves have come and gone. I only know that summer sang in me a little while, that in me sings no more. And Donald Hall, a poet raised in the New Haven area, writes in his volume Without of how he is continually agonized by memories of his beloved dead wife, memories that never leave him. Your presence in this house is almost as enormous and painful as your absence. Powerful lines. Your presence in this house is almost as enormous and painful as your absence. And Robert Frost in Bereft depicts a man who looks out at a rising storm and thinks, something sinister in the tone told me my secret must be known. Word, I was in the house alone. Somehow must have gotten abroad. Word, I was in my life alone. Word, I had no one left but God. Okay, when it comes time to face the end, the great poets have penned some of their finest verses in depicting ways of facing the final stage of life, the fifth season, we might say, death. Emily Dickinson was somewhat enigmatic in her attitude toward death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. William Cullen Bryant urged serenity in his poem, Thanatopsis, which used to be much memorized in school when people actually learned things by memorization and other means. The title means something like meditation on death. Much of the poem was written when Bryant was just 17. And some consider it the first major poem of the independent United States. And it ends this way. So live that when thy summons comes to join the innumerable caravan that moves to the pale realm of shade, where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death, thou go not like the quarry slave at night, scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed by an unfaltering trust, approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. And in crossing the bar, Alfred Lord Tennyson, poet laureate of Britain, hoped that his loved ones would not mourn his passing. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Tennyson wrote this poem when he was 80 years old and asked that it be placed at the end of all collections of his poetry. It is one of the finest uses of a ship's voyage as a metaphor of human life, something that a number of poets have used. Dylan Thomas, the fiery Welsh bard, was not one for serenity. He was into intensity. And in Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night, he urged defiance of death to his mortally ill father. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now. With your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Equally fiery, the Irish poet William Butler Yeats memorably expressed both the weakness and potential for intensity of life's last years in Sailing to Byzantium, a poem that uses the efforts of mariners and pilgrims to get to the fabled city of Byzantium, also known as Constantinople, as a metaphor for the individual's efforts to achieve life's goals no matter what one's age. That is no country for old men. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence. And therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. John Donne may have had the last word on life's last act in two notable works. The first, Meditation 17, was written while Donne was recovering from a serious illness. It was originally written in prose as a kind of sermon, but over the years, because of the greatness of its wording, it has, and rightfully so, come to be viewed as poetry, and it goes like this. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a cloud be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Notice the very appropriate spelling that Donne used in the original version. No man is an island. And of course, Ernest Hemingway used the line as as the title of one of his novels. After affirming the solidarity of all mankind in this meditation, Donne confronted death with faith in his poem, Death, Be Not Proud. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkest thou dost overthrow, do not, poor death, nor canst thou kill me. One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. And so youth, age, life, and death, we can see that the great poets had great things to say about them all. Thank you. Prufrock, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, is, as T.S. Eliot pointed out, Prufrock is actually a young man. He's just somebody that's paralyzed in his own mind as to what he can and can't do. There are other poems by Eliot dealing with age. Gerontian is one where an elderly, the figure of an elderly man is used as a kind of image for the worn-out state of Europe at the end of World War I.
You made some great selections.
Thank you, thank you. They ranged, I think, from along a spectrum of different attitudes for the different topics.
mindful also of Richard Wilbur, who provided poetry that Benjamin Britten used in the War Requiem. And so much of the text of different requia speak to these
Right.
issues also.
Correct, yes, definitely. All right. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.